right, we are recording. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday before Dreamforce. A couple Fridays before an extended holiday and all the good things. My name is Dale Ziegler. I am a senior business analyst with Seven Summits. I'm based here in Kansas City. Co-lead MVP office hours with my partner in crime, Jackie Travieso. You want to introduce yourself, Jackie, please?
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you on this Friday. As Dale said, I co-host MVP office hours. I also lead the Charlotte administrators group in the Charlotte area. And what else do I do? I don't know. I do all kinds of things, I guess.
You do all the things.
I do all the things. If you're in Charlotte, look us up and let's get a beverage together, adult
Awesome.
or otherwise.
Awesome. And then we also have another fearless leader, Jared Kingston, here in Kansas City with me as well. He will be joining us later. He has a client call, but he will be on it as well. You can go to mvpofficehours.info anytime to get any information on how to join other calls. We'll get into the other types of calls in a few slides, but registration and all the information is always going to be at that site. Over here on the right, we have links to different events sites. So if you're new to the Salesforce community, some events are put on by Salesforce, others are put on by those of us in the community. The Salesforce events are listed up here and always updated. And then the community events, you can go to either of these bit.lys, SF Dreams or OneList. Dreamforce, of course, is the big show next week. The community events have kind of cleared out for the rest of the year in preparation for Dreamforce. But we have our first big community event back on the calendar in March next year. Jackie, I believe you said registration's already open for Southeast Dreamin' in Atlanta. And
yes.
March.
Yesterday they posted a super early bird special with a limited number of tickets. I think that there were 8 left as of noon yesterday. $75, which is a pretty darn good deal. They put on a really good community event. I'm very impressed by it. So if you're in the Atlanta area, you want to come on down to get some Southern time, it would be a great event to attend. They've got some good stuff lined up.
Awesome. So yeah, either of these links will get you to all the links to all of these, and stay in the know if you're able to, if they're in your region or if you're able to travel to those regions. We definitely recommend them, especially myself speaking as a core team planning member for Midwest Dreamin' in Minneapolis in July. We'd love to have everybody. It doesn't matter what region you're actually in. And then at the bottom, it will navigate you towards local user groups or community groups or developer groups, admin groups. There are some that are general groups. There are some that are skill set specific, but you can go to these links at any time and get information of local meetups. So definitely check those out. So if you are new to MVP office hours, what are we and what are we doing here? So we meet on the first and third Friday of every month at 2 Eastern, 11 Pacific, 1 Central, 12 Mountain. It is meant to be an open Q&A call. Everyone has the floor. Don't think that because the title is MVP office hours, only MVPs can answer the questions. Don't think that we have all the answers. Everybody here can share, everybody can ask. It's a safe place to bring out any questions or issues or thoughts that you may have. We just ask that if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Occasionally we'll have some really bad background noise that kind of kills the flow of the call. So just stay muted, and but you can definitely unmute to speak, ask questions, whatever. We do have the chat function in Zoom where you can raise your hand, and we're monitoring that. We also have chat that we're looking at. You can ask your question there, and we try to go first in, first out. Please forgive us if we do have somebody cut in front of line, but we are monitoring the raised hands and the chat questions. And if it's totally dead air, just feel free to unmute and speak up and keep the ball rolling that way. We just ask that you announce yourself. We want to know your name, and we can also use chat to post links and other resources. As you can see in my screen, I already have a couple of browser tabs primed and ready to go. So if there's any links that we need to show, we can do that. You also have the ability to share your screen. If you have an in-the-weeds technical problem, we can definitely give you screen sharing capabilities. We just ask that you please do it from a sandbox or a developer org. We are recording this. We will post it to YouTube. So the last thing I think anybody wants is for their production data, or if you're a consultant for your client's data, anything like that, to show up in recorded form. Production is really our last resort. So again, sandbox, developer org, we should be good to go. So who are our fellow MVPs on the call besides Jackie and myself? Who do we have? All right. People tend to trickle in and out of the call, so we may have some join us. So MVP office hours at a global level. So we do this here in the United States, but they're also held in EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa. We also have a Portuguese MVP office hours that Carlos Cicada runs. Normally he's on and we have him speak to it, but it's a great opportunity for anybody to join. You don't have to know Portuguese. Carlos is a native Portuguese speaker who is trilingual. The man is amazing. English, Spanish, and Portuguese. He does a phenomenal job translating. He is just using this as a platform to help our community friends in Brazil and Portugal and other Portuguese-speaking countries. So if you want another opportunity to jump in and help, have no worries about the language barrier. He takes care of it, and it's a phenomenal experience. Both EMEA and Portuguese meet on the last Thursday of the month at various times. I think it's whenever they can get the presenters and speakers coordinated, but it's last Thursday of the month. So definitely check those out. And that information is on mvpofficehours.info as well. So with all of that, dive in. What questions, thoughts do we have so far?
Bruno's got his hand up. Bruno, go ahead and unmute yourself and take it away.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for these calls. I find them so useful. So appreciate everyone's assistance on this. I got a pretty quick question, I think. It's I'm kind of curious. I've got a Lightning UI, and you know how you have dependent pick lists, so it doesn't have to go back to the server. Sort of as you make a choice, you know, it reflects a change in something. Is there any way I can have, you know, depending on, let's say, a couple of pick lists that are picked, a message can come up without having to save the record first? And I'm thinking the answer is no, unless you do something with perhaps Lightning components. But I just thought if there's an easy way, somebody can guide me along, that would be great.
So you want a message to pop up before you save the record?
Yeah, so kind of like you pick a couple of things and then something sort of comes up, sort of a guide. You know, sometimes you can have, I know there's one that you can put conditions on, but usually you have to sort of save the record and then have it display. So I'm just wondering, as you pick dynamically, it could sort of display a message saying, you know, okay, are you sure, you know, blah, 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 depending on the choices you make. And there might be maybe 3 or 4 messages that I might want to hide or display depending on the choices made.
So I don't know if it's GA yet or if it's still in a pilot or a beta, but the idea was being floated and implemented to conditionally change page layouts with fields based on fields that are populated. And if you wanted to do a message, let's say, I mean, you could technically make a text formula field that if you know what those conditions are, then the output text is ... based on those inputs, and then it conditionally renders. I just don't know if it's GA or not.
That makes sense. But then you'd be viewing the page as opposed to, let's say, entering a new case ticket or something to that effect, right?
Yeah. This would be intra-record.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I did see something about that too in the ID exchange, then not yet delivered. So as of right now, then no other ideas, right? Even if I was to look at components or anything like that, Lightning components, wouldn't do it.
Lightning components would have event handlers, I believe, that will listen for those types of things, but that's kind of getting a little bit beyond my knowledge too, but I believe that's what they refer to them as.
Okay.
You can build a Lightning Web component to do what you wanted to do, but that will require development.
Yeah.
The Lightning components listen to events as you enter, not as you save a record, but you can get events. What happens on the web page or that particular DOM element of your browser.
Right.
So if you change the text in an entry field, you could conditionally pop some kind of a message related to that.
And it would use JavaScript because it's client
Yeah.
side. Okay.
It has to be all JavaScript coded, and it has to be a custom web component because there's nothing, to my knowledge, out there that does that. And
Right.
that will be very specific to what you want to do too, because it's like, it's not just generic message. It's going to be something you want to, some kind of rule based maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Couldn't you also use a flow to do that?
Yeah, I thought of that, a screen flow, and then depending on what your choices are, and then display. I thought of that too. Yeah, but if somebody's putting a full case in, I don't know if it makes sense to put all the records in the flow, but that was another option I thought. Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that I'm on the right track and it wasn't something that I was not thinking of. Thank you so much, everyone.
Great question.
The capabilities are getting closer and closer to the realm of real. It's just not, like at least from a declarative standpoint, I guess not quite there yet. But they're getting
Right.
so much closer. Like you're staring at it through the glass, basically.
It's true. Excellent. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right, who else has a question?
I have a question that's maybe more general. If you guys are working with DocuSign, and I was curious to know if I know DocuSign integration with Salesforce obviously can map and link records to documents to records based on different events. But I'm curious about the data because all I've seen so far in my experience has been always document based. But I understand that DocuSign supports an envelope. Essentially, it's a data component that's being sent to Salesforce as part of their integration. But I've never looked inside that envelope. I don't know what's in it. And so I wonder if there is any ways that you could actually get at data elements in that envelope, such as fields. And for example, obviously, those documents are constructed from some kind of web form somebody filled out, and then DocuSign built out in a PDF document to sign. So would these fields be available in an envelope to extract and then post into some kind of a record in Salesforce, or it just document binary?
DocuSign does allow you to do write backs from the document right into your Salesforce record.
Well, what is it writing?
If you've got a dollar amount, or if you've got a pick list value that they need to make a selection from, that data can be written right back into your Salesforce record. Let's say opportunities. So when they commit to amount, and you consider that once they execute that envelope or that document, that is a closed won opportunity, you can, in DocuSign, program it to, one, update the dollar amount with whatever was in the document itself, and two, set the close stage to closed won.
So that will be on the that mapping tool that the DocuSign provides between Salesforce DocuSign connector?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Something to look at. Thank you.
Yep. The envelope itself, if I recall right, contains information about when the document was actually executed and by whom,
Right.
and what the document was.
Yeah.
Along with an executed copy of the document, if that's how you have programmed it to store.
I have a question.
Sure.
We have had a partner portal for a while, and we are in the process of transitioning to a community. In the partner portal, the users can only see one case record type, but in communities, they can see any case record where they are the contact, because we've got in sharing settings, we have the grant community users access to related cases. Is there a way to limit the community users to see only one record type? Can you do sharing rules to limit them to one record type? We don't want them to see other record types where they shouldn't have access, even though they are the contact.
So Salesforce data, regardless of if it's internal or community, you can't pare down security based on record type. You can, you'd have to start minimal and then, like to your point, sharing rules, share that data based on record type.
We've got it set to private. Cases are set to private. So
that's
we
good
do
start.
have sharing rules.
Well, I think the problem you're describing is because of the sharing in community is done through contact relationship. And as long as that contact, who is the user in a community, has a bunch of cases associated to him, he will see all those cases, just as a rule of thumb with the community sharing model, right? That's what you're referring to as a problem. And they should not be seeing all of them because there might be a mix of different cases. If I understood you correctly, you have this contact is linked to or his account rather might be linked to 100 different cases, but this contact might only or should only see like 5 of them, right?
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually with a client building a community where we're exposing their case data and giving them the ability to interact with them, but this client doesn't have any cases that they don't want to restrict view from those users because they're theirs.
So I believe you could do in a community. I believe you could change your sharing visibility on the community itself. It is an external visibility only, so you could basically block all the cases from external visibility, regardless who they're connected to. And then what you could try is set up a sharing set in the community sharing to open up to a specific case, although I am not sure if you can specify, and I don't remember now off the top of my head, if you could specify a record type. But there's definitely a sharing set that will allow you to, let's say, select and say, let me view specific cases. That might help in what you're trying to do, but that means you're basically blocking. You need to block all of the external. I'm not sure what other external visibility you need, because you may have different communities and different users may have a different sharing. Then you're going to block all of them. Basically, it's not like one thing.
I'm also not a huge fan of hacks and workarounds like that, but is it in the realm of possible to move or create a custom contact lookup and use that as your primary contact and then only populate the native where they should have visibility to it?
I think so many things are built on that contact on the case that it would be difficult to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was very hacky and very workaroundy, but that could, since the security is leveraging that native contact case relationship.
Yeah, the other option I would explore, and I don't know the capabilities of your team, but in that situation, there's really no way around this other than building a custom view. So you could basically create or assemble a component based on, like, for example, a list view, but then encode a filtering in there so that they won't see specific record types. So your Apex class would basically filter out all these cases that they should not see. And then you expose that component in a community and not use a standard case view in a community then.
So we're in the community with the client. Go ahead.
The problem is searching.
Right, that's what I was about to bring up.
Yeah, because we've limited the list view so they can only see the one record type. But if they search for something, if it's in one of their cases on the other record types, it'll surface that case.
And this is John. I have one idea. You can base sharing sets basically off of any lookup field. So still getting into the realm of workarounds, but if you had a second contact lookup field in the background and you populated it with a workflow or process builder when you wanted it shared, so you used the workflow or process formula to manage the sharing criteria essentially, and then use the sharing set to share the case when the user matches that contact, the contact ID of the user matches the contact ID of that custom lookup field. That may be a way to keep using the standard contact field on case, not change anything there, but only share cases of a particular record type or whatever other criteria you put in.
But then aren't the cases still discoverable via search if the native contact lookup is being populated?
I don't think if you lock it all the way down for private sharing, obviously test that and don't go off of what I say.
Well, but even within private, that native contact field is essentially the owner field from an external standpoint. So the gets re-engaged.
Sharing setting is enabling that. So I'm wondering if you disabled that and created the sharing set.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that external ownership models, there's a checkbox for turning that off somewhere.
Yeah, there's on the sharing setting, there's an other settings section that grants community users access to related cases. I just
that
dropped
one
the link and to the chat window as well. I don't know if this fits your scenario or not, but it sounds like it might. So that may be helpful.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Good question. Thanks for that discussion, those recommendations, gentlemen. Who else has a question? I will ask a question. Has anyone used Google Alerts newsfeed? It is a Salesforce Labs app, and I can't get it to work. Does it sound familiar to anyone?
What's it called? Google?
It's called Google Alerts. And even though it is a App Exchange product, you're not going to be able to find it this way. You're going to have to just regular old Google it, and then it takes you to the listing. It's weird. I've reported it to the App Exchange team. Yep. So there's a field on the in the Lightning component that says feed URL field and then feed URL. And let me see if I can grab this and share it with you guys.
I've set up Google Alerts before, but it's been a long time ago.
Right.
And I don't remember quite how that worked either.
Let me share this. So created the tab, dropped in the component, but it's this and this that are my issues. So when I mouse over this, the feed URL is the URL for the RSS feed. I've set up the remote site. Now, did I set it up correctly? I'm not quite sure. In the documentation, there's nothing that defines what these two things are, what they're supposed to do, and where within these or anywhere else does it point to the account name.
Well, the feed URL field, that's a field where you would have that URL if case it was on the record, so that you don't have to type it in. And based on the record, it might change that URL. So that's why it is like that variable. You could put not just Google Alert, but you could put some other URL on the record, and that component will feed it out of there. The feed URL would be your URL. This is basically like if you wanted a component always display one feed from Google, whatever news feed that is. That's where you put in there, assuming that feed is working.
Okay, so is that my remote site URL?
No, it's your Google. It's a feed which you actually have your. Well, I mean, I guess if you have it in remote site, that's your Google or newsfeed URL that you want to grab the news from.
Okay, so then I guess let me take a step back. So if I'm setting this up for a client or any admin that is setting this up, and they set up their own Google alerts as an RSS feed, is that Google alert specific to the Google account that I'm logged into? Or how does that then become dynamic so that you have 600 users who need to take advantage of the RSS feed to see information on the account that the account record that they're looking at? How does that become dynamic for anybody? So how does one set it up as an admin and then go
so that's what I was saying, that you probably need, if you want it to be dynamic, or if you want the news feed to vary based on the data, then that you would have to populate that data. That URL would be varying based on the account or record you're on, and that field, that Google Alert URL, they have it in there by default. I think you could change that to any other custom field that you could create, and it will pull that URL from that field and display it to that, to that news feed. But if you want it static for everybody to be the same, then you use that feed URL, and whoever sees that component will see exactly the same feed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And is your intent, Jackie, to just display news related to the account that you're looking at?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, because my understanding of how Google Alerts works is you have to set that alert up on Google itself, and it's based off of whatever term it is that you're wanting to be alerted of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how you would feed a specific account into that, unless that's what this component's attempting to do on your behalf. But
okay, and that's exactly where I was trying to figure out, is it, yeah, you got it. You know exactly what I was trying to solve.
Yeah, I would think that you could get there maybe without doing a Google alert. If you're just wanting to do a Google search on that specific account, there's probably other ways to do that and just feed it into Google search in essence.
Well, another option you could potentially explore is, I think, I don't know if you have an Einstein, but Einstein alerts, not alerts, but Einstein component, typically on an account will display all kinds of internet feeds about the account that it's on. And that might be something that will automatically solve your problem, because then it's basically data dependent, and Einstein will feed that for you. It's just going to be a little component nicely placed on the page, and then if it's account based or another record based, he will fill that in.
Okay, that sounds like that's something that would be better. All right, I'll look into that, because I don't know. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Who else has a question? I don't see any hands raised at this time. Dale, do you want to show some of those tabs that you've got lined up?
Sure. We'll post that later. So who is going to Dreamforce next week? Raise your hand. Astro Joy is.
How do you raise the hand? On Zoom.
On Zoom, sorry.
How do you raise the hand on Zoom?
You should be able to go in to look at your participants. The participant. Hang on, let me just, that's a way.
3 raised hands so far.
I can only see mute or rename.
So taking taking a
Maybe.
small
Oh.
sample set. It sounds like only a handful, which is cool. So for those of you who aren't, did you know that you can stream a lot of the big, like the keynotes and a lot of the fireside chats just by going to salesforce.com/live? Because you can. Definitely bookmark salesforce.com/live and look for the times. And we tested this at the Kansas City user group yesterday. What does it look like if you click on it now? You click on it, it just says coming soon, which would imply that once that time hits, you should just get sent straight into a video feed. But like I know Jackie is setting up a watch party at her local user group for the main keynote, but definitely check out this this page here to see when those talks are. You can stream them live. Unfortunately, the fireside with President Obama will not be live streamed. I'm sure someone will try and capture a recording, even though I'm sure they're going to be explicitly told not to, but I'm sure people will be taking recordings and posting them. But definitely check these out for the live keynotes. And then the breakout sessions, at least the 40-minute breakout sessions. I don't know about the theater sessions for specific technical content. Those will be recorded as well. And within a few weeks after Dreamforce, posted to Salesforce's sites and YouTube and everything. So if you can't go to Dreamforce, you can still get the content. You can still get a lot of that experience.
So my understanding is that actually all the sessions at Dreamforce are recorded, with exceptions of few. Even if theater sessions are recorded, the only difference is that typically theater sessions are like in the big area. They don't record a video; they only record the sound and slides. So that's available on their YouTube channel after the conference, or even during the conference they post it. But some of the breakout sessions are totally video, like televised. You can watch it on the video. Keynotes definitely all there, typically on the video that you could see.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had heard about that on the theater sessions, but no, that's good to know that they're capturing the audio and slides for those too. So that, because there's some really, really good content in the theater as well in the 20-minute sessions. It's not just the 40-minute sessions. The big one, if you've never had the opportunity to go to it in person or see the recording, is True to the Core. I consider myself a core functionality nerd. I try to wring out every ounce of juice out of them. So this is the one where the product managers are there to talk about, here's what we're doing to the account object. Here's what we're doing to the lead object. I love me some flow and process builder and automation and all of that, but you're not going to get a lot of that there. You are going to get the core functionalities here straight from Parker Harris, Salesforce #2, and Brett Taylor, president, right-hand man. Like, they will be up there talking about it and introducing the PMs and all of that. So definitely try to make a point to include this in your schedule.
And Dale, another thing to note, all of those times listed are Pacific times.
Oh yeah, that too.
Cool.
So do we still have hands raised because you're going to Dreamforce, or are they questions? We have some stuff in chat. Let's see. Anybody?
While they're thinking of their questions, you've got one more tab that you can talk about.
Ah, the brand store, yes. Jackie, I'll let you talk about this one because you pointed me to it.
Oh, sure, no problem. So in case you're not aware, there is a Salesforce personal swag store. So if you need to purchase some gifts or Salesforce branded items that you want to give out to new team members or as some kind of acknowledgement reward, the site has got some really good stuff on it. They've added also a Dream store. So this is all Dreamforce branded. There's a handful of items on here, but a lot of times Salesforce will hear from us saying, hey, I wasn't able to attend, or I saw somebody who had this really great tchotchke. Where can I get one? So they're starting to put some of the branded stuff out available for us at the public to purchase as well. So the only thing I would say is, as you're going through this, double check the shipping rates, because you might want to pull your order with somebody else's order to get better shipping rates. Because the last time I did this, the shipping was a little bit expensive. But they got some great items on there. It's salesforcestore.com is the URL.
Yeah. I think another item that I would like to call out, if we have a lull in the questions, is so this is MVP office hours. Jackie, Jared, and myself were MVPs. That's why we're running this. We've had a few more MVPs jump into the call. But if you're not familiar with how we became MVPs, the nomination period is actually open right now. So if you know somebody who goes above and beyond to help the greater good of the Salesforce community, either because they're tweeting or they're on the Answers community or they lead a user group or they do any number of things because it's the right thing to do to help people out, you can nominate them as an MVP. There was a bit.ly that I had. I'll just put the full link in the deck here. But if you know anybody that's like that, nominate them. Speaking personally, it's been an amazing experience to meet a whole bunch of people here in the community, to take giving back to a whole new level. So if you know anybody that you think is deserving of that, the nomination period is open until, I believe it's December 9th. So we got a couple of weeks, but don't take those couple of weeks for granted. Definitely nominate somebody. I see Jared right there. This was TDX, right?
Hey, Daryl.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Carlos.
Yes, how are you, man?
Doing well. How are you, Jason?
Just a shout out that on Dreamforce on the Thursday, the 21st, at from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. we have 2 sections called Meet the Salesforce MVPs. I'll be in there with somebody, you might know him. His name is Steve Moe. And we'll be there hosting and welcoming everybody that wants to know a little bit more about what it means to be a Salesforce MVP. It's Thursday, the 21st from 11 to 12.
Awesome. In what, the admin meadow or where?
Carlos, do you know where your session's being held?
Yes, is Moscone West, first floor, Trailhead Zone, Trailblazer Community Cove meet and greet.
So that sounds like the main zone.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you for doing that. That's fantastic. Scott's got a question. Oh, Scott, this is a doozy. Any advice for a method of deleting millions of records that doesn't take a couple of weeks of running multiple instances of Salesforce Data Loader, Configuro Data Loader, Excel connector, etc.?
Might I advise playing a movie in the background that you can pay attention to so that at least you're not focused on it taking as long?
I'd like to clarify the question. Is that a global delete that you want to clear out all the records, or this is a selective? You want to keep some but delete a bunch, millions of records, but some need to stay in there?
Good question, Scott. What you deleting? Selective. Can't truncate the object.
I guess why? Help me understand why that the answer isn't
I don't know, start over again and only save the data and only migrate the data you want to keep.
This is in your production org, right, Scott? And if you're able to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that.
Scott, I've unmuted you from the control panel. No, Mike,
Oh,
they need
no
to keep
mic.
current 2 years only, getting rid of everything older because we're way over our data limit. Okay, I mean, how many millions of records and like 3 to 4 million?
So one option you can consider is that I actually don't know if I have that open on my GitHub, but there are some developers out there that build Apex batch job that can basically be configured to delete anything you want. And some of them have like queries. I know I created one for my team at one point as well. But what it means really is you setting up a batch job with a selective query you want to delete, and it will go and crush all your records without you knowing it or waiting for weeks. It does take some time, but it does it. And the one benefit of it is you could actually delete them without a trash container. So basically, you could delete them forever from the start if you wanted to. If you want to put them in a trash container, it will still count against your data because it's basically like an archive until they're actually gone. But that will be one of the options I would explore, is to inserting a utility like that and just scheduling it and just running it cleanup essentially. Like if you want only 2 years, so grab anything every week or every whatever, grab everything that's older than 2 years and delete.
I guess I'm struggling to also understand. I get it. It feels like it takes a long time, but are you triggering some cascading deletes as well with these 3 to 4 million, or is it just I have 3 to 4 million tasks and I have to get rid of them? Because what I'm wondering is, do you have the option to set it when you leave for the night, let it run overnight, and then check on progress in the morning? I mean, that would get you data loader. It would get you not having to worry about code. It might take several instances of doing it, but I guess it's a little bit
tasks, if it's related to a task or activity, then those are automatically archived up to 2 years anyway. Salesforce will not let you keep them active. They'll archive them for you.
Based on the age of the org, though, right? Isn't that one of those?
No,
where
based on the age of the task, not the org. Well, I mean, your org might play with it if it's new, but it's basically a task. Any task you have that's beyond 2 years will be set. But what they're doing is setting a flag to archive, and it just goes, then no longer shows up in your searches easily, or you have to do special stuff to find those tasks.
Gotcha. So
Scott,
he says,
I'm wondering if, sorry, Dale, I'm wondering if you are also running up against API batch calls, because we only get so many per 24-hour period. Because this sounds like a project that I did similar for a client, and I had to watch the batch jobs. And the other thing that I did was I got in touch with the AE and said, here's what we're doing, so that the AE, especially if you're up against contract deadlines and renewals, had a conversation with the AE. I had also learned that even though we go through this process of removing or deleting the records, it doesn't catch up on the Salesforce backend for 3 to 4 weeks. So you might be going through and deleting these, and you can physically see that they're deleted, but when you go in and look at your data storage, the needle doesn't seem to be moving.
Well, it's because they go into a trash can, all right? The data loader would not permanently delete. The data loader would just set a delete flag, and it just goes into this archive area. It still takes up your space.
I'm pretty sure that I went in and I kept clearing out the trash can as well.
Yeah, with the million, is that you're gonna fill up that trash can that's gonna max out anyway with that many records. So
Yes.
But doesn't the
Right.
trash
And
can
hard
automatically?
delete.
Yeah, recycle bin doesn't count against storage limit, and the trash can empties itself after X number of days anyway.
Right.
Is the concern in the big
2 weeks.
picture that, or is it because if it's just simply you can't have data that's more than X number of years old in the big picture, is the trash can really that big of a concern?
Yeah, I've had to delete several records before too. And Scott, my question is, if you're in a private org and you've got a lot of sharing rules are going to get recalculated when you do this, and that I've seen that have an extraordinary impact on the performance. So if you're able to do it over a weekend and turn your sharing rules off, you might get significantly better performance if you've got a bunch of roles that need recalculated.
Have you that, and have you played with the batch size on data loader? Because if you're running at the default 200, that could trip up sharing rules, that could trip up triggers that invoke deletes, anything like that. Whereas if you turn the batch size down, yeah, it may still take a while, but you had mentioned that you try to set it overnight and then it times out. Is it timing out or is it erroring out? I think that's a big consideration. Something else that I've pulled up here that you may want to tinker with, that you may be able to stage some things, is using the command line with data loader and being able to get your batches of data preset and then essentially just hitting a button for it to go. And you can also use client-side schedulers to then get those to run. If you have smaller batches, that's going to help your performance. If you
note that it's Windows only for the batch now.
True. Yeah, good question.
You cannot do it on Linux or Unix servers or whatever you are.
Okay, interesting about the sharing rules. I've been maxing out the batch size. I would say turn it down. I'd hate to tell you turn batch size all the way down to 1, but that would ensure that every record gets its due process. And then maybe test that overnight or over the weekend. I hate to admit it, I have done million record operations within data loader that took several hours. And at least within the org I was working in, I never had a timeout because the process just kept going. You were still in an active session.
Well, there's also consideration to, I don't know if, I'm assuming that it's, Scott is using bulk API rather than just regular API in data loader. That's important consideration because that's what plays with the batch size. Certainly you can set batch sizes and stuff for the regular API, but the bulk certainly does better performance.
I'll check the bulk API setting on my next round. Scott, you are not alone. Many of us have done the million record purge and migration and all those things. So you are not alone, my friend. Let us know how it goes. Reach out if there's anything else we can help you with.
All right, who's got the next question? What's our time check? What do we have? 11 minutes.
I kind of have a query to the group. I know I've heard now kind of officially stated that use of Workbench have been deprecated and heavily discouraged by Salesforce due to some of the security hurdles. And they're going to stop supporting or using Workbench altogether. It might disappear sometime soon. Anybody heard any kind of like dates or know about like Workbench being like removed out of the tool belt for Salesforce altogether?
So technically, it was never supported by Salesforce.
Right, correct.
Which means it could go tomorrow.
It was Salesforce tool built by evangelists, and
Right.
that's always been that way. It's never actual official product, but it's now effectively they're saying like, don't use it.
Right. Yeah, because I've noticed they've started when you get in there. They're trying to give you different ways to go. I've had a try dataloader.io bar like that. Yeah, they're passive aggressively pushing away from it. But as for dates, no, not that I know of.
I had another question. I'm trying to create a process where on these community cases that the case owner auto follows the case and then it unfollows because of the 500 limit for following. And I know Rakesh has one on Automation Champion using just strictly flow. But I was thinking about using Process Builder to kick off to limit the type of records that it will affect. But I wondered if anybody has an opinion on that, whether it should just strictly be a flow or whether Process Builder with flow would be the best way to go with that.
I mean, Process Builder into Flow would give you more scalability, because Process Builder would essentially be the trigger, and then Flow is where you could set more dynamic conditions on whether or not the follow or the unfollow on entity subscription actually happens. I guess I didn't know you could actually get to entity subscription directly on Process Builder for that unfollow part.
Yeah, I don't know that you can. What I was looking at, though, was limiting, what records get affected by it and then launching the flow to actually do the entity part.
I don't think so you're saying on case owner?
Yeah, so when the case changes from the queue to an individual owner, that it auto follows the case, so that if the community user enters something in the case feed, then the case owner will get notified.
So this is where, I mean, if you subscribe to the one process builder per object model, this is kind of a big decision point in that, because if you're saying if you want this to occur when the previous owner was a queue, the new owner is a user, any other criteria on the case?
Record type.
And the record type is?
So I was going to use prior value to see if it was changed from the queue to an individual. but I've just started this process, so I haven't explored a lot.
Ugh.
So I was going to use a formula instead of using the.
Well, that's what's tough is right from the jump, it's making you decide, is your owner a queue or a user? What do queue IDs look like?
Yeah, they're different. So the user IDs have a specific prefix, and queue IDs have a different prefix. So you could potentially use a formula to grab part of the prefix to identify whether there was a queue, but I think it will be a little bit hard to make decisions on that. In a process builder, it is.
Yeah, it's almost like you just need something really generic, like no criteria, and then you do that evaluation in the flow, except then you've lost that your previous owner was a queue once you jump into the flow. Because isn't the order, you commit the record to the object before you could then get into the flow, right? The record has to be committed to evaluate the criteria node.
Mhm.
So you've lost the queue ownership. I'm hoping somebody smarter than me at this can jump in and tell me I'm wrong. I don't love that we're hearing silence on that. That means I'm right.
That really depends. I think when you're jumping from flows and process builders, it's not that the record needs to be committed. The record needs to be saved. The flows, it has to do with order of execution and specifically what triggered that, right? Like, for example, an Apex transaction or not. If it was a trigger in Apex that caused the execution of these flows or process builders. But definitely the correct thing is that it's still going to be within the same transaction. So the record should be saved, but not necessarily committed.
Okay.
But you still, I mean, the data needs to be found in the flow within that context while you're executing until everything sort of finishes, because I think the process builders and the flows do execute in the same steps. The only difference is the process builder ends and it starts a new order of execution, sort of like a new detour on it. But it's still whatever first initial DML that sort of caused that would still control that commit at the very end. So you could have a multiple process builders, multiple flows executed within the same transaction and never really commit until that first one committed.
So, okay, I get all of that, but now what we're facing here is that with case and owner, they put a very deliberate fork here of what are you evaluating, a queue?
Well, this is a references you're looking at. You're looking at the references to be able to reference queue. It's still, you're looking at an owner ID, but they're giving you a reference in Process Builder for convenience to access that reference record.
Right, but is it a reference that then becomes a limiter that may or may not let you compare that the prior value?
So hit cancel on that, Dale, and then use a formula instead of your. So the conditions are met. So up higher than that under the criteria for executing. Gotcha. There you should be able to use the prior function command there. Prior value, I think, is what it's called.
That's ultimately what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to use. So prior value, case owner ID equals the queue ID.
Yeah, and I forget what the first three ID numbers are for a queue, but
It's 00G.
00G.
G, that sounds right, yeah. So, I think you just want owner ID in there. So
Yeah.
big case.owner ID. Start, and I think there's a start with function that you would put instead of the and. It'd be start with prior
Well, I
value
was going
case.
to use the exact record ID or queue ID so that it only affects that queue and not other
Oh,
queues.
gotcha. Okay. Well, that, yeah.
Okay, so that the prior value equals that queue ID, and then
And I was going to do an is changed on the case owner ID too, so that it only fires when the
I'm thinking out loud here, I guess, but I'm thinking that you won't have a prior value if it hasn't changed. So could be wrong on that, but
well, but it's a very specific is changed from. If
so
it's coming from a specific queue
Okay.
changing to a user.
Gotcha.
pretty much when a person on the communities enters a case, I've got a process builder that changes the owner to a queue. So the record has already been saved, and it's just when somebody goes into the queue and takes ownership of it, then they should be able, I want them to be able to auto follow that case.
I would say I'm actually 3 minutes past due on another call.
Yeah.
We can potentially take this offline and further parse through this, or I don't know if you think you have a good enough start here to leverage either is changed or prior value and go from there, and then reach out.
Well, I'll go from there, and then if I need help again, I can circle back to the next office hours.
Gotcha. Or it's great advertisement here for the MVP Office Hours group. You can also post in here and we'll pick it up.
Okay. Well, thanks for your help.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks again for joining. Thank you for answering. I hope to see some of you at Dreamforce next week. And for those of you who can't, don't forget, check out the live videos and everything. And next call will be Friday, December 6th. Happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, happy time off, happy safe travels and everything. So thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, all.